You want to know what scares people? Success.
And they've got talent as well as just beauty.
And I said, Mom, I am a rich man.
Don't make moves, and when you don't climb up the ladder.
The women's movement? Jesus Christ, I haven't even had coffee yet.
As women, we are constantly bombarded by female-inspired role models who remind us of our commitment to feminism, become empowered. In TV shows, movies, books, but also in politics, business, the music and fashion industry, and let's be clear, especially in social media, women that stand out are praised as references in the feminist movement. We refer to those who have overcome the structural difficulties that favor our male peers, or simply those who have stepped out of the patriarchal role and decided to embrace traditional masculine values such as self-sufficiency or toughness. It has almost become a duty for us. Women now not only are expected to fill as effectively the role that men have taken over throughout history, but also we must have the ambition to strive for more, climb the ladder and become the successful leader with the purpose of serving as an inspiration for our female comrades. And it is a very important step and definitely constitutes a major breakthrough in terms of women's representation in areas of power. And as a personal aspiration, I too have been inspired by all those powerful women in our culture to follow their example and to work hard to have a successful career and not depend on anyone or anything. And I was doing great, thinking that I was working on myself, studying hard to pass my degree, exercising, taking care of my diet and skin. And then I checked Instagram between one of these breaks from my daily productive routine and stumbled across this post by Nicola Jane Hobbs, who is a feminist psychologist who has written several books. Basically, the post reads as follows. Growing up, I never knew a relaxed woman. Successful woman? Yes. Productive woman? Plenty. Anxious, unafraid, unapologetic woman? Heaps of them. But relaxed women? At ease women? Women who don't dissect their days into half-hour slots of productivity? Women who prioritize rest and pleasure and play? Women who aren't afraid to take up space in the world? Women who give themselves unconditional permission to relax, without guilt, without apology, without feeling like they need to earn it? I'm not sure I've ever met a woman like that, but I would like to become one. Having spent all my day doing things, and I include those that I consider as hobbies too, like reading or exercising, this post felt like a slap in the face. It felt like a revelation, and reading through the comments I also realized the amount of women that also felt this way. And I started to reflect on the pressure that we experience in terms of having to become successful in our careers. Otherwise, it's almost like we are unfulfilled for not having the ambition to strive for, at least, the kind of empowerment that we see daily through our screens. Reflecting on this, I found myself asking, is society placing too much pressure on women to feel empowered? And I think one way to approach this question is by asking another question. How do we become empowered?
Get your fucking ass up and work. It seems like nobody wants to work these days.
That's so true.
You have to surround yourself with people that want to work.
Okay, Kim. Empowerment means different things for different people, but a quick search on the internet for empowered woman gives you the picture of what is considered representative of the term, at least for a significant part of the society. In the last decade, we saw the rise of the girl boss and corporate feminism as the embodiment of what a truly feminist woman should be. The idea was basically that gender equality could be achieved by promoting the access of women into traditionally male-dominated positions within the economical sphere, supporting women into becoming CEOs and encouraging them to aim at acquiring the economic power and independence that they were denied for so long. I'm not gonna talk about the amount of problems with the ethics of the girl boss, because there are already a lot of videos on YouTube that discuss this topic, but I do want to take out the idea of women being financially successful as a source of empowerment. If you have social media, and I guess you have because you are watching this video on YouTube, you probably have seen the recent stay-at-home girlfriend trend. If you haven't, it basically describes a woman that does not work and relies for her subsistence on her partner's income. Again, I'm not going to expand on the topic, but I would like to touch upon some of the critics of this trend. And for one hand, we have those that suggest that it is dangerous to be financially dependent on your partner because of the possible consequences that it may have if the relation ever breaks down, but also because of the power dynamics that build up when you have no other source of income to support yourself. However, other critics were specifically aimed at pointing out the sexist nature of this trend, as it reinforces traditional gender stereotypes, relegating women as housewives and criticizing their lack of ambition to aspire to something more. I'll summarize more this point of view by quoting a phrase of this article. I agree that women can do and be whatever they choose. After all, that's what all those years spent fighting was for. But choosing with an ambitious mindset is much more fulfilling and rewarding than sponging off the success of another. The thing is, the main point I see of this type of criticism is to link women's success or female empowerment directly with economic activity. And yes, I agree that financial independence is a very important factor in the path towards women's autonomy. However, I feel like all these critics stem from subordinating self-realization and personal development desires to the dynamics of a system that doesn't give a fuck.
I'm ready to go to work.
A system where monetary value prevails over everything else and that pursues the idea that work should be the major source of personal pride. One that convinces us into thinking that the best way to dignify ourselves is through our participation in the generation of wealth. And especially for women, working has gone from being something reserved exclusively for men to being part of our path to our self-fulfillment too. This dude is not stupid. Of course, he has taken advantage of women's desire for empowerment to spread this idea and further entrench the meritocratic ideals that underpin our economic model even more in our mindsets. Even if I understand that women's economic autonomy is strongly linked to their independence options, turning completely to the ideals of a system that, far from advocating women's liberation, is primarily concerned with the continuity of its existence through the pursuit of constant profit with its consequent inequalities, may not seem as the kind of empowerment that we should be aiming at. If anything, it may be more enriching to lean toward new ways of looking at our freedom that detach themselves from economic productivity and a false feeling of women's emancipation and self-realization. Akala Basu, who is an Indian professor at Cornell University in the fields of demography and sociology, proposes to promote new forms of women's empowerment that go beyond economic opportunities. She says much of the research on empowerment is about women having the resources, technical, material, and physical, to make decisions, to be physically movable, and to manipulate their enlargement environment. However, she explains that little concern is given to other aspects of a woman's life, especially those that have a direct positive impact for herself, leaving society out of the equation. In her words, the autonomous or empowered woman is supposed to be good for the society because her autonomy results in higher contributions to economic development. In this article, that I'm going to link below this video, Basu opens the door for us to consider new ways of looking at female empowerment. For her, such empowerment must be considered from all angles, not just in terms of commodities and economic choices. She introduces a new ingredient to feminism, the access to leisure. Now, much of the ideas that Basu exposes in this article are directly aimed at describing women's conditions and forms of empowerment in South Asian nations, where patriarchy is still an extremely relevant concern. But I think it could also be applied to most of the Western world, or at least to all those nations that presume to have overcome patriarchy. Thinking back on Nicholas Hobbs' Instagram post, I have never met a relaxed woman either. The social architecture upon which our system is founded simply does not allow to. We are constantly competing against each other for job opportunities, or we are scrutinized with the aim of celebrating any small success we achieve as a feminist accomplishment. We have reached the point of idolizing labor in the name of female independence and meritocracy. And I think what Basu suggests is like a breath of fresh air, to put leisure as a source of empowerment. Leisure, very specifically defined by me, and this is a compilation of characteristics that I've found interesting with respect to this subject, as time for one's own selfhood, existing by its own sake, without utility. Now, this is crucial. For it to be leisure, it must be completely useless. The reason why I think the useless aspect of the term is important is because we tend to confuse what we like to do with rest. Our hobbies should not be a break from the work routine that we have built up. And I'll give an example. I love listening to podcasts, so whenever I feel sick of studying or doing projects, I like to open Spotify and play my favorite podcast. But I still spend energy on trying to focus on what the talking person is explaining to me. I don't switch off completely when I'm listening to them, but rather divert my attention and energy to that other activity. Yes, I prefer listening to podcasts rather than studying, but I still do not rest. Another example is exercising. There are a lot of people that, again, use exercise as a form of taking a break from the routine and unwind from productivity. But exercising is also productive in its own way, and you still spend energy. Hobbies are necessary. It's super cool to enjoy doing other activities, but please don't mistake them with rest. Let's give ourselves the pleasure to be unproductively free. Now, going back to the topic of leisure, not everyone can afford it. Actually, leisure is a very expensive luxury. For leisure to exist, there must be time, and not everyone has time. When we speak of leisure as the activity of doing nothing, we are approaching it from a privileged perspective, from the perspective of someone who can afford to do nothing. But this is not the case for many people who need to work countless hours just to secure their right to exist. Not to mention the situation of women's access to leisure in poorest countries, where, and I quote directly from Basu, housework is rarely considered to be labor enough, and hence women, whether employed or a housemaker, must unrelentingly run household units without making claims to rest. But hey, it is not only through productive work that the idea of female empowerment is transmitted to us. Since we are already here, let's discuss other ways that society has to approach this concept. Okay, I get it. Feeling pretty does increase our confidence and self-esteem, to the point where we feel more in control of our lives when we go out with an outfit we like matching the new Sephora lipstick. Beauty has become one more tool for our journey towards empowerment. Social media is full of images that show us personalities decked out in luxurious dresses and wrapped in elegant jewelry that scream power. From an aesthetic perspective, just like the girl boss, there have been many other internet trends that have aimed at conveying female empowerment, such as the dark feminine girl or the femme fatale that project this image of a confident woman with a seductive, first look that adjusts to beauty standards and is not afraid to break gender stereotypes. And I remember now the famous glow-up trend in which you are supposed to undergo a physical transformation that radically changes your appearance and after which you are supposed to feel more confident in yourself, as if becoming beautiful is directly equivalent to gaining more self-esteem and power. But not only in social media. The movies and shows we consume have also instilled in us the idea that empowered women are conventionally attractive. And I find this very interesting since it is quite contradictory if we look at it from a feminist point of view. We spend our lives trying not to comply with the male gaze standards, but in that process we have become victims of another type of gaze, or the way we want to project our power, which is none other than through luxury and beauty. Thus, empowerment has become commodified, like everything else under capitalism, by convincing women that by buying X products we are going to be able to fulfill our power fantasy and be free from the dynamics of the patriarchy, when the only thing it does is encourage women to participate in the culture of overconsumption. Women spend huge amounts of money on products that promise to reward them with self-esteem. At the same time that the beauty industry aims for the standard it has created, it also benefits from directing its advertising to sell us female empowerment in the form of anti-wrinkle serums and fashionable outfits. I saw the other day a video from For Harriet, and she said a sentence that I think it brings together what I want to express here. It was something like, we tend to see everything that feels good to us as a form of liberation, when it does not have to be like that. All said, my problem with empowerment is about the way we are teaching how that term looks like. I want women's empowerment to represent more than luxury, beauty, and professional success. I want women's empowerment to represent true liberation. It's okay for women to be ordinary, to aspire to non-ambitious goals and to not look expensive nor conventionally beautiful. To encourage women to embrace their strength through confidence and rest. Otherwise, it feels like we are trapped into the same cycle of self-exploitation, but instead of wanting to please the patriarchy, we yearn to please our own desires for autonomy and power.